Okay, looks like we are now live. I see Sungula's here. Hey, Sungula, and Celeste. If I could just request one or two more people just to say hello, let us know who you are and where you're from, and then we can get started. Just wait a couple more secs. Okay, cool. We've got Sharon and Georgie. Hey, okay, cool. So we are live, and Gerard, welcome, Gerard. Cool, so let's get started. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us for another HR Indaba Network webinar, which today is proudly brought to you by one of our key CHRO South Africa partners, Momentum Corporate. I'm Nick from CHRO South Africa. I'll be putting a message at the top of the chat screen, and it would be great if everyone could just let us know where you're from and what position you hold. As we usually do, I would like to encourage everyone today to ask as many questions as possible during the session, which we will endeavor to answer in the 15 or so minutes at the end. If we don't get around to answering them all in this session, we will ensure that all questions are answered, and we will send you a personal mail in the coming week with your answer. I see Val's back again. How's it, Val? So today's topic is retain your star performers. Make sure your employee value proposition addresses their challenges in the new way of work. So COVID-19 has been hard on everyone, but one of the hardest hit segments of the workforce has been the high performers. These people with critical skills have had to continue to work under enormous pressure and have, in many instances, experienced physical and mental challenges as a result of the new way of work. Companies need to retain the skills of these performers and therefore must ensure that their employee value proposition is geared towards retaining high performers and must be responsive to their specific challenges. So today I'm joined by three incredible women from Momentum Corporate, and I will ask them now to quickly jump on camera, please. Oh, there we go. Great. So we first have Emda Fourie. She is the Regional Head of Consulting at Momentum Consultants and Actuaries. And then we have Siphokazi, Parirenyatwa, and Mashadi, Makobe, who are both disability claims managers at Momentum Corporate. So today, Emda will be discussing the importance of attracting, building, and retaining critical skills in your organization and how an integrated EVP solution can help you do this by being proactive with the management of employee well-being. Siphokazi and Mashadi will share stories from the coalface of processing claims during COVID-19 and reveal how the new way of work has impacted employees with critical skills, noting how these employees often face mental burnout and musculoskeletal challenges. I've been practicing that word the whole day, but still comes out wrong. Before I hand over to Emda, I'm going to just run a quick poll. So if everyone, I'm just launching the poll now. If everyone can just please quickly answer. So the poll should be up now. And it is, what progress are you making with your employee value proposition? Your options are none, we don't have an EVP. None yet, we would like help with setting up an EVP. Some, we have seen a few benefits here and there, and a whole lot of progress. Our EVP is the cornerstone of our company's recruitment and retention strategy. So I'll give you about five or 10 more seconds, then we'll publish it, and then we'll hand over to Emda. Guys, so we can see there seems to be a clear leader up until now. I'll wait another 5 seconds and then I'll end it. Okay, we seem to have stopped, so cool, ending the poll. So the responses are 16% don't have an EVP, 16% say none yet, but would like help with setting one up. 50% say some, we have a few benefits here and there, and 16% say a whole lot of progress. So some interesting stuff there. And I'm sure as we go through today's presentation, some of those sort of challenges or questions may be answered by our panelists. So without further ado, if I could just request Mashadi and Siphokazi to just go off camera for now. I'm going to stop my slides and let's get going. Cool. So thanks so much, Emda. Over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for joining us this afternoon. We are very excited to be here with you. So as Nick introduced, our topic for today is to have a look at how can your employee value proposition help you retain and recruit high performers. And throughout our presentation, you will see, you know, the benefits of those high performers. So what we're going to start off with is I am going to start with initially just, you know, telling you about the value of an employee value proposition in this changing world that we are living in. Then my two colleagues are going to look at what was the impact of COVID-19, particularly on employees, but also on your leadership teams. And then I'm going to conclude to say, well, practically, how do we look at the employee value proposition? How is this made up of? So if we look at the employee value proposition and how we got to this new animal, then I think historically, employers and employees alike, when you ask them, so what are the benefits of working for this company? The answer was they pay me a massive salary. And we've heard employers saying, you know, my employees are my greatest asset, but are they really? And I think the answer is yes. If we look at this graph, that gives us an indication of the salary bill as a percentage of operating expenses. And I mean, if you look at a company like Old Mutual, who effectively, you know, sells advice and wisdom, then we see that it's more than 80% of their operating expenses. And then, you know, a tech company like Vodacom, obviously it would be a little lower. But we can see overall, as a percentage of operating expenses, that the payroll is quite high. If we look at the red graph, on the other hand, then we see that even though we are in a very low inflationary environment right now, salaries year on year on average are still increasing by about 5%. So that tells us that that story is true and that employers, you know, do value their employees and therefore they then pay them a great salary. So if we are paying large salaries, then, you know, if we lose those high-performing employees, what is the actual cost to the organization? So our cost of recruitment, I mean, research is given to us is that at least 10% of that new recruit salary will be spent on the headhunter and all of those kind of onboarding expenses that you will have. Then in addition to that, you would take about 120 days to find that new individual, to then get that new individual upskilled, to get that individual productively. So if we then see that, you know, what large percentage of our operating expenses are attributable to salaries, then clearly we can see that it doesn't make financial sense to lose a high performer to just replace them with someone else that in any event has not given us an indication of what their abilities really are. In addition to that, we must also remember that our workforce is changing. So if we look at the stats from our umbrella fund, the Funds at Work umbrella fund, then we can see that the silent generation are now totally, you know, out of the picture. And that even our baby boomers, so people 56 to 74 years of age, are only 10% of our population, our working population, where your Generation Z, so those are the youngsters under 24, effectively my children, they now make up about 4% of our workforce. And then the people that, you know, someone in my generation, which is Generation X, would have been absolutely amazed when they entered the workplace, the Generation Y, or the millennials, as we refer to them, are now more than 50% of our workforce. So if our world and our employees are changing, can we then still look at the way that we remunerate and that we retain them in the same light? And I would propose no. So we need to start to look at, from a generational point of view, what influences resignations, and then of course what impact how I recruit these individuals that I want in my business, as well as then how do I retain them. So if we look at the baby boomers, which is the green line, I hope you can see the colors on this, we can see that for the people 56 and over, a meaningful work, but particularly a competitive pay, was what they found to be, together with job security, to be the most important aspects of their world. Then if you look at generation Y, which is our millennials, then we see that actually they want professional development and they want advancement opportunities. So a total different way of looking at what do I need from my job and why do I need that from my job. So we can no longer be in a place where we only provide our employees with a salary. So, sorry, now I did something wrong. So our employment contract and the way that we look at our employment contract has to change. Now, from an employer point of view, I don't think anything has changed. An employer will pay you a salary, but for that, they want more than your 8 hours and they want more than 2 hands. They really want everything from you. So for our new generation employees and our high production employees, our high skilled employees, for them to give their time, their skills, and their experience, they nowadays want more than just a salary. They now want an employee value proposition on top of that. So it's important that we understand what does an employee value proposition mean, and that's what we're going to try and take you through this afternoon. And then also what are the benefits, that you as a company can have from that. So what is an employee value proposition? And in the words of Michael Page, which is a massive headhunter and recruitment agent in the United States, he says that an employee value proposition is the unique benefits that you as an employee receive in return for your skills, your time, your experience, and your capabilities. And it defines the essence of your company. So, we all, when we sit at the braai, we all know who's the company that provides the 14th check. But we also know who's the company that's got the additional benefits that are being provided to their staff, and the ones who assist when there's a crisis and those kind of things. So it definitely has proven over time that a strong employee value proposition is what helps to retain your top performers and to also attract the best talent. So you'll see later on in my presentation that an employee value proposition helps you with your reputation in the market out there. But I am going to stop my part of the presentation here and first let my colleagues from the disability area tell us, how can a good and a well-structured employee benefits program also assist with the employee assistance programs, and how can that help in the changing times for COVID-19 in crisis, etc. Nick, so I'm going to hand back to you.
Nick, you're on mute.
Sorry, I was on jumping on mute trap. Sorry about that. Siphokazi, if you could just jump on camera. Sure. There we go. Cool. And now over to you. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much, Emda, and thank you, Nick. So Emda's given you just the skeletons around the importance of an EVP, what employees are looking for. And what I'd like to do this afternoon is give you a little bit of some information around what we are seeing in the disability space and how this then affects employees who work in your organization. So, yeah, COVID-19 has really changed the landscape for all of us. Work is not really what it used to be, and employees are facing various challenges at the moment. Social isolation. Especially at the beginning of lockdown, it was very, very difficult for a lot of people. Within your own personal space, you've heard your friends, you've heard your colleagues around how, working from home as a concept prior to COVID sounded so lovely. But a lot of the feedback that you hear now is around people saying it sounded lovely, but it actually hasn't proven to be that great. Not being able to go see my family, being stuck at home within my own home environment, not having the option to go out where I need to be. And then the other thing is productivity. So you're now at home. You're now having to look after your children, be the teacher. If in the initial stages of lockdown, your domestic worker, your gardener was not available, so you were then responsible for taking care of your entire household. And if that's not something you're used to, it can put a lot of strain. And over and above that, you then also need to be a productive employee. If you're struggling at work, if you're struggling to produce and actually get the work out, you're then having to have difficult conversations whilst working remotely with your manager or leader, and those difficult conversations are over a phone or on a media platform, which, when you take away the face-to-face, can make it very impersonal, and some of the feedback that you receive can actually be very personal itself. And then to round it all off, there were various health concerns. So the obvious one being, am I going to get COVID? How do I protect myself? How do I protect my family? I have COVID. What does that mean now? What do I need to do? Do I need to go to the hospital? Who can treat me? Where do I get tested? And all the anxiety associated with COVID itself. And another layer in terms of health was around your medical conditions. So if, for whatever reason, if you suffered an accident during the lockdown, if you have a chronic medical condition, what does that then mean for you as an employee who has to be productive, who has an employer who's looking to ensure that you deliver as per your requirements? So since the beginning of lockdown, we've really seen a change in our claims experience. Prior to lockdown in 2019, musculoskeletal related claims were our highest claim cause. And after that, we saw cancer, which came third. And then 4 months ago, so in about June 2020, the picture had actually changed. We had a lot more cancer claims, and these were the leading claim cause. And this was followed by medical conditions like hypertension and diabetes. And musculoskeletal claims were only third on that list. Now in November 2020, musculoskeletal claims are actually back at the top of the list, and cancer is second, followed by neurological conditions. As a disability team, so within our disability space, our biggest concerns are actually around the psychological impact of COVID-19 on the South African workforce. And experts are saying that we can expect an influx of mental health claims in the future. But as you can see from the data in front of you at the moment, we're not really seeing that. Musculoskeletal conditions, according to the World Health Organization, these are conditions that are related to your joints, your bones, your muscles, and they are the leading contributor to disability worldwide, and they account for the greatest proportion of lost productivity in the workplace. For any employer, that is a sobering thought. In January 2020, Minister Gwede Mantashe advised that 2,406 occupational injuries were reported in the mining sector. So this means that there were 2,406 employees who were affected to some degree by an occupational injury, and this may have affected their ability to do their job. During the initial stages of lockdown, most of the workforce was not reporting to work, and the expectation was that we were going to see a lower number of injury on duty cases in the disability space. And this appears to have been the case in the early stages. With the lifting of the lockdown regulations, some employees have been able to return to work, but a prolonged absence from work may have resulted in deconditioning that then predisposes those employees to musculoskeletal injury, especially in industries where tasks are physically demanding. For those employees who were able to work from home during lockdown, if your work setup at home was not optimal, then they may experience lower back pain, neck pain, or any other physical pain that's associated with a station that isn't set up optimally. So if you also think about it, these employees, if you're working from home, the hours that they spend in front of that computer, sitting, working in a chair or at a desk that isn't suitable. So if working from home is going to become a future possibility in your company, then it may be beneficial to consider how are employees sitting? Where are they? How are they positioned? And is there something that you as an employer can do about that? According to the World Health Organization, there are 18.1 million cases of cancer per year, and 1 in 6 people die from the disease. With the advances in medicine, including early detection, more people are surviving the disease after undergoing treatment. What this means for you as an employer is that you may have an employee who's been diagnosed with cancer and is currently undergoing chemotherapy or radiation, or that they've had surgery. And according to WHO, 55% of people who undergo treatment for cancer experience pain. And pain can really be debilitating, and it can affect a person's ability to function optimally. The emotional and psychological stress of the pandemic, coupled with the diagnosis of cancer and the pain associated with the condition and the treatment, can be a difficult maelstrom for any employee to navigate. So if you're an employee and you have an employer who supports you during this difficult time, it really could be priceless. Neurological conditions are diseases that affect the nervous system in your body. So this will include your brain, your spinal cord, the nerves in your body. And these conditions would be things like a stroke, epilepsy, Parkinson's, or neuropathies. Hypertension or high blood pressure is a risk factor for stroke, and peripheral neuropathy is nerve damage caused by diabetes. So during lockdown, a lot of people had trouble accessing their chronic medication, and in some instances, they couldn't even consult with their treating doctors. And this was the case whether your employees consulted via state or at a private facility. They were all affected by the lack of healthcare. So if there was a break in chronic medication for one of your employees, so they couldn't get their high blood pressure medication or their diabetes medication or even HIV medication, TB, if there was a break in their access to medication, it may have resulted in uncontrolled hypertension or diabetes, and that can result in a stroke or peripheral neuropathies or any other complication that would then affect that employee's ability to do their job. So as I said earlier, we haven't really seen a lot of mental health claims at the moment, but we do really think that we will be seeing these claims in the future. The uncertainty associated with the pandemic has affected us all emotionally and psychologically. So even people with no predisposition to mental health issues are experiencing various degrees of difficulty. Since the 1st of March 2020, 5% of all of our claims are due to psychiatric conditions. In 2014, 12% of our claimants for psych were below the age of 35. In 2020, 26% of our psych claimants are below the age of 35. This has doubled. For an employer, this is significant because under 35s are the future leaders in your company. So are you as an employer equipped to deal with mental health issues in the workplace? Are your leaders equipped to support and assist employees who have mental health issues? There are various reasons why we have increased mental strain at the moment, why employees are experiencing increased mental strain. A lack of meaningful connections. So humans, we are social beings. We want to interact with other people. And research has shown that a lack of meaningful connections has a significant impact on all facets of health and well-being. Not being able to see your family and friends has a substantial psychological and emotional effect on an employee. So those initial stages of lockdown where we couldn't leave our homes would definitely have had an impact. Employees are spending a lot of time working on their phones, and they're therefore exposed to increased amounts of blue light. The blue light emitted by digital devices suppresses the production of melatonin, which decreases sleepiness. So then this affects our ability to get good quality sleep. And good quality sleep is essential for physical and mental well-being. Research indicates that a lack of good quality sleep is linked to various medical conditions such as depression, Alzheimer's, cardiometabolic diseases, cancer, and obesity. Whilst working from home, employees can easily extend their working hours. And in all truth and honesty, we've all done it, where you say to yourself, let me finish this quickly. And if you think about it, your top performers are the people who are going to be more driven and more motivated to just do that little bit more. They then neglect their hobbies and other activities that take them away from their computer. And in this new normal, it's critical that they maintain a work-life balance and include hobbies and activities that bring them joy. Vitamin D is produced by the body when skin is exposed to sunlight, and it's essential for building strong bones. Recently, our sedentary lifestyles prevent us from going outside, from exposing ourselves to the sun. And COVID-19, with lockdown and working from home, has just amplified this. So this has resulted in vitamin D deficiencies, and vitamin D deficiencies are linked to various medical conditions such as cognitive impairment and depression. Excessive time on social media, I think it's very easy to be connected to a device. It sits right next to you. You're able to quickly check in. How's someone doing? What are they doing? But the issue with social media is that it can lead to anxiety and depression, because people use social media platforms to gauge their popularity and their self-worth. Not getting enough likes can lead to feelings of inadequacy, which may spiral if they're not addressed. Financial hardship is a very real factor. Many employees have already faced salary cuts or job losses, or you know of a family member or a friend who's been affected. And this last one, the trauma and fear of getting sick. I think for some of us that may be a little bit abstract, but for a lot of people it is a very real concern. We've had a few claims where employees give feedback and say that the anxiety that they're experiencing is so debilitating because they have a very real fear of exposure to COVID. They don't want to leave their homes. They don't want to report for work, because for them, catching COVID could really spell the end of life itself. So all of these reasons are a concern for any employer. If you have a high-functioning employee who's faced with one or more of these circumstances, they may no longer be able to deliver the same caliber of work, and they will need your support and guidance to become functional employees again. So in closing, I just want to give you a few tips that you can share with your employees during this new normal that we're all living through. They need to look after their physical well-being. Physical well-being encompasses a lot of things, including getting quality sleep, exercising, watching your diet, and avoiding stimulants like alcohol. It's important to create a work-life balance. Creating a routine can help with this. Spending endless hours in front of the computer is not conducive to well-being, so they need to have breaks. They need to step away from that computer and spend quality time with their loved ones. They must ensure that they keep taking the medication and consult with their doctors when they need to. You are not Superman. You are not expected to hold the weight of the world on your shoulders. Get the help that you need because the support is there and it is available. They need to consult with their medical professionals. Stay connected to their loved ones. And thankfully now, with the easing of lockdown, especially after last night's announcement, it'll be a lot easier to go out, to connect with your family, see people who give you positive energy, who support you and build you. And please limit social media as much as possible. People live their best lives on social media. You only show the good things. So if you're going through a bad time, it looks like everyone else is living their best life, and that may not necessarily be true. And encourage them to speak up if they're struggling. And for me, I think the distinction is that a lot of employees feel that they can only go to their employer when they have issues at work. But the trick here is to ensure that your employees know that they can come to you whether it's work or life in general. Having someone that they identify as someone that they can confide in will really go a long way. And above all, they must be kind to themselves. grant themselves a little grace during this difficult time. Thank you very much, Nick.
Wow, thank you. Thanks, Siphokazi. That was some very insightful and, quite frankly, frightening information there. But I think just thank you for those calming tips there at the end. Next up, we have Mashadi. Mashadi, if you could jump on. Mashadi is going to be chatting to us a bit about the impact of COVID-19, particularly on the new way of work on leadership teams. So, over to you. Thanks, Mashadi.
Thank you, Nick, and good afternoon to all of you. Thank you, Siphokazi. You have highlighted so many challenges that employees have actually been facing during this pandemic. And I'm sure all our leaders around this table and even sitting in our offices are asking themselves, what can I do? Having worked in the disability management team has really helped us to see that the role of a leader during a crisis that an employee is facing is quite critical. In fact, when an employee is diagnosed with a medical condition, it not only affects their ability to do their jobs, this actually changes all spheres of their lives. So a leader's response to this crisis will be judged by their employees. We have seen some employees actually refuse to return to work to the same employer. And when you ask, what is the problem? It is my leader. The thought of going back and engaging with the same leader that they didn't quite have the best of relationships initially, it's so demotivating for them, and it's also anxiety provoking. Siphokazi, you really highlighted a lot around COVID-19 and just the pressures that everybody's actually facing. So a leadership's response to this crisis is quite critical in order to create a culture where people feel safe, they feel seen, they feel heard, and they feel respected. Yeah, this period that we're going through is actually an employer's dilemma. You have to juggle so many balls and you wonder, what do I need to do in order to make it better for all my employees? First of all, one needs to be aware that while you have employees that are working from home, building and maintaining relationships remotely is still critical. It's still quite important in order for them to actually function on a day-to-day basis. While maintaining all these positive relationships, a leader needs to be clear on, firstly, what are your key performance areas and how do I measure your productivity virtually? And I'm sure it's very difficult for everyone who's a leader wondering, how do I make sure that my people are actually delivering on their requirements? Also, there are certain difficult discussions that must be had. Unfortunately, because of the difficult times, certain companies are going through retrenchments. There's performance discussions that need to be held, and these still need to happen virtually. You know, Siphokazi mentioned that our main claim drivers are musculoskeletal conditions, medical conditions, psychiatric conditions, as well as that was medical conditions, musculoskeletal, psychiatric, and cancer. This makes up 69% of our claim drivers since the 1st of March 2020. You can only imagine, people are actually going through quite a lot and they don't know how to manage it. So this means they are expecting that their leaders will support them emotionally during this time. And sometimes it's not just someone that has one of these conditions. At times it means a combination of these conditions. The Occupational Health and Safety Act has been amended in 2019 to include ergonomic regulations. What does this mean for an employer? Think about it. Ergonomic setup, how you're sitting at your desk. Firstly, your employees that are sitting at home doing their jobs, do they have the necessary tools, the necessary equipment to do their jobs? Are their desks set up? Some occupations require multiple screens. Do your employees actually have all of these tools to perform their jobs at home? Then Siphokazi also mentioned the issue of deconditioning. A lot of people who could not work outside of the office were out of work for months on end. And now they have to go back to work, and there is quite a bit of deconditioning. Physical agility is not where it was initially when lockdown started, and this may increase the chances of them actually having work-related injuries. Now, a leader is required to balance, first of all, operational requirements, but your employees' wellness, especially your high performers, will be judged by your employees and needs to be balanced critically. Now, we've heard all of these issues that, leaders will be facing, are already facing. One needs to understand that this new way of work is actually a first for all of us, if you think about it. We all are not sure what to do. We need to always equip ourselves with the right tools to make sure that we can support our employees in terms of their personal lives, but also in terms of them performing their occupational requirements. Whilst, we work in this with disability claimants, one key thing that they keep mentioning over and over is the need for communication, clear and, concise, needing to be told what needs to happen when. And some of the statements we've heard were claimants saying that since I was sick, my employer never phoned me. They never even checked in to see, how is it going? How's your treatment going? How are you coping? So they completely feel abandoned. They feel that they're forgotten. They're no longer part of this team that they used to belong to. So the challenges that people are going through, not only just their medical conditions, this pandemic has presented a need for even more that the leader needs to do to support their staff. So first of all, know your staff. Knowing your staff will help you be able to identify when there has been any changes in their lives, whether there has been any issues around their behavior. If your employees that are working from home are logging in even an hour later than usual, that must make you think, okay, what is happening? Let me check in. Again, check in regularly. Please pick up the phone, phone them, whether it's once a week, have a 5 minutes, 10 minutes coffee date with them to just say, how are things going? And please do not only check in with regards to work. These are people, they have challenges, they have kids at home. Siphokazi has spoken about schooling. They now have to be the teacher, the gardener. They have to clean the houses and everything. So check in on how the kids are doing. How are you coping with everything? How do I support you as your leader? Provide them with information. And even if you don't know what the answer is, guide them in terms of where to go in order to get stuff done. This could be, firstly, who is your HC representative when you need some support? Who is that IT guy that can help you when your computer is giving you grief? And, on your intranet, here's the page where you can go to access this policy, that policy, and where do you access the rest of the other services that we have for our employees? Provide a safe working environment. This also includes having clear guidelines around what are their requirements at work and how must they perform their jobs safely. Financial literacy training. We may find that we are not very skilled at this as leaders. Not everybody has a financial background. You don't even know how to help these people that are going through these financial constraints, but everybody has been impacted in one way or another during lockdown. And also up until today, some people lost their jobs, some people had salary cuts. So guiding people in terms of where they can get the necessary financial skills and managing their finances appropriately will actually be quite, helpful for these employees. Now, just to give you a bit of an idea around one of our clients in the financial industry that we've been with for 5 years, and they have seen an incident increase in terms of psychiatric claims from 6.5% in 2016 to 36.8% in 2020. This must tell you, it's really not where it should be. The average age of all their claimants is 31. So we're speaking about, your future leaders, as Siphokazi actually said, and these are very young people. And most of their claims were for employees who have only worked for this employer for 41 years, for 4 years or less. So this tells you that this is not people that have really given, years of experience in this company or years of service to this company. So this must make you think, what is really going on? Our health data has also indicated that only 13% of the claims were actually for specialist consults. And among the top 10 claimed conditions, only 1% of these were psychiatric claims. When you look at the two, there's a mismatch. On the one hand, you have 36.8% of claims in 2020 being for psych cases, but only 13% are actually accessing specialist care, and only 1% of the claims in total is actually for psychiatric claims. So something there isn't quite matching. One would ask why. Sometimes people don't even know they're mentally unwell. Some people are fearful of disclosing and saying, this is my situation. There's a fear of stigmatization. What will people say? Psychiatry, unfortunately, is seen as one of those conditions that are being stigmatized quite a lot in our communities. So claimants do find it difficult to share this information. Now, looking at some interventions that we put forward for our client that I've just referred to, first of all, line manager training to identify employees at risk. Remember, the only time you can identify employees at risk is if you know your employees. The regular check-ins, making sure that people are, know what they need to do. You've shown them exactly what their productivity rate is and how to perform. Then you will be able to see when somebody's not doing well in the workplace. Assisting in educating employees in terms of what their benefits look like and how to utilize them. And sometimes, like I indicated now, only 13% saw a specialist. Only 1% of the total health data was for claims around psychiatric conditions. So either people don't really know where to go in order to utilize these services, or they're just afraid to disclose. Partner with your EAP, your employee assistance program providers, in order to have early identification and intervention. So when you can partner with all of your service providers and have an EAP system whereby they can catch all these cases where people are unwell, but they're not yet disabled, you're able to actually intervene early and prevent disabilities and losing all your key high performers. Supported reintegration to ensure a successful return to work. I cannot stress this enough. We've seen that just saying to someone after being on disability for a while, go back to work, does not work. People are deconditioned. They need graded, return to work, a program where they can actually just see, what do I do now that I'm back at work since I've been unwell? What are the changes? Do I need retraining? So supported by their leader, supported by their HC, as well as any other providers that you are using outside. Another case that we've had is actually one of a lady who's 32 years old, single mother of 3, who had a mental illness episode at the beginning of 2020. Unfortunately for her, she now has 3 children at home. She needs to figure out what she needs to do in order to manage this. She didn't see herself going back to work because her job is so strenuous on its own, and now I'm having to deal with everything else at home. I'm only 32. I'm not as resilient. I don't even know what I am doing half the time. At the moment, I'm happy to say she's almost completely back at work. We put together a reintegration program for her, supported by an occupational therapist, going through cognitive rehabilitation, as well as supported by the HC, as well as her leader. So everybody knew what their role was, and she now can return to work. So at the moment, she's still only back at work for a few hours, but we're working towards getting her back to her full capacity. Now, last but not least, Your leaders are actually the pillars of your team. Now, are your leaders taking care of themselves? Do they know when they are unwell? And I wonder if any of us are taking the time to pick up the phone and check in on that leader, because they are also human. They've also gone through this whole massive change over during this pandemic and over lockdown. Please pick up the phone, check in on your leaders so that you can equip them to have greater relationships with their own subordinates, and they can support their subordinates better. Thank you, Nick. Over to you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Mashadi. And I hope some of the leaders that are on the session today have taken some notes. There's some great food for thought there. So again, thanks, Mashadi. I'd like to call Emda back onto screen, please. Emda's going to have a nice chat with us about a blueprint for a powerful, holistic, and integrated solutions to deliver value to your employees. So over to you. Thanks again, Emda.
Thank you. Thanks, Nick. And thanks, ladies. I think you've clearly demonstrated the kind of value that a well-structured employee value proposition can actually bring to your staff. And I think you've also demonstrated that, this value proposition has to be flexible so that it can adjust for new times and for, areas that we've never seen before. But before we now look at, what is that blueprint that I spoke about, let's first look at, who is a high performer or, somebody with high potential, because I think they are equally worth protecting and looking after. And I think if we close our eyes, then each one of us knows who's the high performers in our businesses. We recognize them because they work independently. They get on with the job. They are always, onto that next thing. And they really always find something that they are good at and that they can then produce and send out. So they exceed all the expectations that you ever bring towards them. And I think what I like about them the most is that they are the ones who would ask for feedback. They would want to know, how did I perform? Did I exceed your expectations? Am I actually, on par and doing what you expect me to do? They take pride in their accomplishments. And I think that's part of the reason why they, continuously need that kind of feedback from their leadership to say, how am I doing? And I think this is one of the challenges that we also see with COVID is, are we giving that feedback? Leaders are generally, criticized for not giving feedback and not saying thank you and you do well in general working circumstances. So have we upped that now that we are in this digital work? They are highly productive, and it's, I think, for that reason also that we then actually try to keep them within our businesses to make sure that, our businesses will thrive and will do better. What I found interesting in my research on, what on an academical basis makes up a high performer was the fact that they know when to say no. And I think that's part of their success, is that they do not get involved in stuff that's not going to benefit them, that's not going to benefit the company. So obviously, if I'm a high performer and I've got high potential, then there would be certain things that I would want in return for what I'm giving my employer, because I am giving him more than 2 hands and more than 8 hours of my time. And what we found is that top performers are expecting top compensation. So these are the guys, that are expecting you to look after them, that are expecting that you really show them that you appreciate them with the check that lands in their pockets. We've also seen that with the extent of our salary bill already, that, just compensation and just a salary is no longer going to cut it for us. The other thing that your high performers value is their health and their fitness. So they are also the kind of person that, are serious about my work life. And they are generally the people that are also able to put the boundaries around when is work time, when do I switch on my computer, when do I look after myself. So if we then look at, apart from the cost of recruitment, why else would we want to retain our high performers? And Arnold Kransdorff, who is a knowledge consultant in America, says, if knowledge walks out the front door, your organization will be plagued with an inability to learn from past experience. And this will lead to reinvented wheels, unlearned lessons, a pattern of mistake, productivity shortfalls, and a lack of continuous performance improvement. So we can see that these are the people that are the backbone of our businesses, and they are the ones who are innovative. They are the ones who's training our new staff. They have already learned the lessons. I mean, we've all had suppliers where there's a change in your servicing team, and suddenly, you know, all the history has to be relearned, all the same mistakes that we lived through and that we were patient with in the past. We have to go through all of that. So by retaining the knowledge and your high performance in your business, you are making sure that your relationships are kept in place with your clients and internally, and that you are increasing the performance of your business. So then if we create a strong employee value proposition, then the Corporate Leadership Council has given us some insight as to, you know, what is the value of a strong employee value proposition. Because the majority of the things that I'm talking about today is not tangible, and, you know, we cannot necessarily put a rand value to them. So the very first thing is that a strong value proposition is one of your key elements in recruitment and retention. And what they have found is that a strong value proposition can increase the commitment of your new employee by up to 29%. So, you know, that commitment is what is going to ultimately be pulled through into production, into innovation, and all those kind of things. And a strong EVP or employee value proposition can increase the likelihood of your employees being the advocates of your business to other employees, increasing from 24% to 47%. And we all know that, you know, mostly the best recruits that you can make is somebody that comes with a reference from somebody on the inside. So if that increases to almost 50% by just adding your employee value proposition. It creates a very strong people brand. I mentioned previously in my presentation that, you know, we all know who's the companies that really look after their staff. The ones where it's not just the salary that you earn, but it's all of these other little things that I'm going to come to just now that makes it an awesome place to work for. And, you know, the ones that we think one day when I'm big, I'm also going to work for that company. Very interestingly is that a strong employee value proposition can reduce the cost of a new hire by up to 21%. That means that if I've got the good benefit structure and good proposition that I'm giving to my new employee, he will actually, or she will actually come and work for me for a slightly lesser pay than if it's a company where they don't really value the employee value proposition that's put in place. So then what is an employee value proposition? Okay, and it effectively has got 5 pillars. Okay, so the very first one would be the compensation. And compensation in this instance is not just the salary. It would be everything around that salary. So it would be the fairness of that salary. Okay, it would be the increases, the promotions. So it's the systems and the processes that you put in place around all of these things, where a new individual can speak to older serving employees and they know that there is a career path. All of these things are working for me. It's benefits. Okay, so that would be my leave. How flexible are the working hours that I've got? It definitely is the kind of insurance, the disability that Siphokazi and them spoke about. It's all of those kind of things. It's the employee assistance program that my employer has in place, so that if I've got a legal problem, I can phone a qualified person without having to go and find my own employer. And then, of course, it also means that it is benefits that will support my family. So if I had to die, or if a family member had to die, is there, family insurance or funeral insurance, as an example? Will my family receive some bereavement counseling when I pass away? So it's that holistic picture of, you know, what's important to me. Then thirdly, it's your career. And again here, you know, employees and future employees want to know, what is my progression, my possible progression. They want to know that there's stability in this career that I've chosen. So it's not going to be chopped and changed every second day. There will be education, there will be training. These things are important. And again, we saw that for our millennials, you know, their own improvement and development is very important. So we need to make sure that our employee value proposition has got that in there. And then it's development planning. So many companies, does the performance management, which goes hand in hand with the compensation, but then they don't really sit down and properly plan and document that progression or that development plan of each one of the individuals. Then the work environment, and here you'll see quite a number of things of that definition of the high-performing individual that we spoke about. So in the work environment, we're looking at things like, am I receiving the recognition for my output and for the work that I'm being given? Do I have the autonomy to do my work, or am I being micromanaged? Is there space and an acknowledgement of personal achievement and work-life balance? And do I understand my roles and my responsibilities? Because all of those things gives me a comfort when I go and I live in a comfortable environment in my workplace. And then culture, which is currently one of the key discussion points in this new way of work, because how do you keep your culture alive if everybody is sitting behind their own computers? And culture consists effectively of, my colleagues and what is my relationship with them? What is my relationship with my leaders and my managers? Do I understand my company's goals and their plans? Is there collaboration and team spirit? And I think that's one of the things, that most companies are struggling in this new way of work. What is the social responsibility that we as a company live for? And then ultimately, is there trust in and amongst all the employees and myself with my manager? So if we can implement an employee value proposition that consists of all of these, because I sometimes think that HROs think of an employee value proposition as my salary and my benefits, and they forget about all of these other legs. Then what are we getting? So if we can put a proper, well-designed employee value proposition in place for our staff, then we find that we've got a company where our people are inspired, where they can grow, they can thrive, they can relate to this business through this culture that we have created, because it feels like I'm going home. And then there are enough rewards and recognition that comes my way. And if I work in an environment where I've got all of this in a value proposition, then I am able to provide sustainable value creation so that I can then turn my company into a high-performing organization. And that high-performing organization then, through its leadership, manages the talent. They look at sustainable compensation. They look at clear purpose and direction, and the performance management, because as we heard, high-performing people want to have that feedback. Am I doing okay? And it's not always just looking for a compliment, although that would be nice every now and then as well. But it's, am I on the right path to make this and keep this a high-performing organization? So ultimately, this company will then be able to inspire, to care, and to provide an equitable workplace where you will attract and you will, most importantly, be able to retain your high-performance employees. Nick, thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for your time. I'm going to hand back to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Emda. And I think pretty much just like that, we have we are almost on the hour, so we don't have much time left for questions. I've got one or two which I would like to ask. So I'm just going to stop the slide presentation and just ask everyone, ask the three of you just to quickly jump back on camera, please. I would like, from my side, I'd like to know what are some of the indicators you guys have seen of employees at risk, especially if they're pretending to cope. So, how is there something that you guys can pick up on in that particular case?
Sure, Nick. Yeah, I think pretending to cope is probably the right phrase to use. But I think Mashadi probably touched on the first one. It's the amount of time that they are spending. So if you have an employee who was efficient, they were able to actually do their job within their working hours, now you see them later on in the evening. and they're on every evening. And even when they're working those increased hours, they're still unable to cope with what you're giving them. They're not meeting their deliverables. There's a set project, there's a set due date. They don't make the due date. They're always asking for extensions. And when you check in, they may say to you, it's a little bit busy. I'm really struggling. It's quite superficial. There's the information that they're giving isn't necessarily detailed. They're not giving you the detail of what the actual problem is. So those for us would be red flags. The other thing that you can look out for are your employees who you know have medical conditions. So if you know that one of your employees has a medical condition, and you can see that their performance is affected, one of the first things you probably need to check in on is, what is happening with your health? Are you okay? Did you see your doctor? Just to see how are they actually doing. And hopefully, if you have that relationship of trust, they will be able to actually give you the detail on their struggles or the challenges that they're facing, because it actually could be something very simple that you're then able to accommodate and assist that employee, and then they're able to get back on track.
Okay, fantastic. And then just sort of one more, because we do need to jump off. Again, how much responsibility can an employee take for external factors, i.e. other financial losses in the family or deaths of family members during this time? What would their sort of responsibility be?
The employer or the employee?
The employer. If one of their employees suffers from one of these external factors.
I think my honest feedback, I'm not sure if Emda or Mashadi wants to take this. Sorry. Talking.
I think that the employer may not be able to change the circumstances or make it any better, but the support and actually allowing them the necessary time. If somebody needs to attend a funeral, if somebody needs to arrange a funeral, if somebody needs to, go and see their specialists or whatever that has actually happened in their lives, you provide them with the space to do that and the support. When they come back, you ask them what's going on, how did it go, but then you still need to be clear around the requirements. Now, you've missed a day of work. Your deadlines are still on. Can we see if the team can help you out? How do we help you catch up so that a day or two of work that you've missed does not actually put you even further, under pressure?
Great.
Nick, if I follow up on that, I think in circumstances like this, the responsibility of the employer would be to assist with financial training. If you are going through financial trouble, then, it would be, are there soft skill training on how to do your budget? How do you find a plan, or what plan do you make so that you can ultimately get out of this? I mean, this is one of the things where we see the biggest cause of presenteeism coming through, where, I'm behind my laptop, but actually all I'm doing is I'm going through what bill is next paid, where to be paid, where can I hide, etc. So from a productivity point of view, the assistance that the employer provides at that time is, how do we get you through this, or how do you get yourself through this, because it's not the employer's responsibility, and then ultimately get the productivity back from that point of view.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you. So we could go on forever, but we do need to finish off now. So I do want to say a big thank you to Emda, to Siphokazi, and to Mashadi, and to everyone for joining us today. Last thing from my side, I just need to make a note to everyone. Our next HR Indaba Network webinar is on the 20th of November, the War for Talent. And you will hear from Old Mutual's Head of Human Capital, Tseliwe Ross. To visit or to see any of our upcoming events, please go to chro.co.za/events. You'll see what we're up to, what's coming up, and go and register for the rest of the stuff we have for the rest of 2020. And we will continue in earnest again in 2021 as well. So again, thank you to everyone, and thank you, ladies. And have a wonderful day.
Thank you very much, Nick.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Cool.
Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys.